So this week on the Any Given Monday podcast, we have not one but two guests. Our first guest, despite losing his sight at age 10, has gone on to represent Ireland in two sports, as well as becoming a multiple-time national champion in para-triathlon, and has podiumed on the world stage with his guide, coach, friend, and second guest of the podcast this week, who has also competed internationally as a professional triathlete, has a level 3 triathlon coaching, and has a master's degree in sports and exercise physiology. Donnacha McCarthy and Sean Husband, welcome to this week's episode of the Any Given Monday podcast. How you getting on?
Brilliant.
Great,
Thanks for
Gav.
having
Thank
us.
you. You're all
Everyone,
good.
everyone at home knows the budget's increasing because we've two guests on, two superstars on this week. They're gonna be like, "Geez, the sponsorship's going well for the lads." Sean, Donnacha, you are very welcome onto the podcast. Obviously, with two fantastic athletes, it's interesting to know where both of your backgrounds are. But I suppose as a group, we're here to talk about the relationship that you guys are doing in sport. But I suppose, Donnacha, if we can start with you, obviously at 10 years of age, gotten into sport, where did your sporting career start, sporting life start? And then, Sean, after that, we'll find out your background.
Yeah. For me, I suppose you mentioned there, I lost my sight at the age of 10 due to leukemia, and I would have been sports mad before losing my sight. But I think after that happened, I definitely kind of lost my way when it came to sport. I didn't know there was any such thing as para sport or anything like that. So for me, for a long time, to be honest, sport really wasn't part of my life. So for that period of time up until really 22, I guess. So kind of last year of university, kind of heard about the FAI were doing kind of come and try sessions for blind football at the time. And I was like, God, this sounds great. I'm going to give this a go. Went along and absolutely fell in love with kind of just the the exercise and being active and getting out doing sport again. And yeah, from there, kind of all really kind of kicked off for me. So probably couldn't even walk after my first training session. I don't think I'd moved that much in 10 years. So I'm sure you all know the feeling. But yeah, went on to play football for probably about 4 or 5 years. Captained the Irish team in European Championships qualifier and scored our first goal as well. So that was a nice thing to do. But then kind of after we got that far, it was kind of like looking around to see what else I could do and I suppose push myself a little bit more. Got into running, joined my local running club here in Dublin, Crusaders. And yeah, kind of heard about triathlon then through work. A friend of mine was doing triathlons at the time. This was around 2017 at the time, and was trying to convince me to get involved and do one. And went along to para-triathlon kind of talent ID day and met Eamon Tilley. He was the performance director at the time in Triathlon Ireland for the para side. And yeah, just kind of got involved from there. So I always have a story. Like I always remember the first kind of day I went along to para-triathlon, the talent ID day, and Eamon, like he's a real straight talker, kind of sat me down and goes, what's your swim time? And I was like, I can't swim. And he's like, okay, well, what's your cycle time? I said, I don't have a bike, I don't know. And he goes, what the hell are you doing here? And
In
I was like,
terms of it,
well, yeah, I was like, I can't run though. So he goes, right, we'll try and teach you the other two. So and yeah, just yeah, kind of snowballed from there really.
How
Sean, if we
was
can
that?
bring it over to you before we dive in on the other one, just to kind of get your background. What brought you into the world of triathlon? Obviously, fantastic accolades, and even Donnacha has some Sean missed out on in his intro. But for you, Sean, what was triathlon to you when you were getting into it?
I just like most young ones, I started off in hurling and I was the bit of surfing. And my dad actually started doing a bit of duathlon training, so that's run bike run. And I kind of tagged along to it. So he was doing that as a bit of cross training for the surfing because it's still quite physically demanding. Getting out to the waves is the hard part because the waves obviously push you back to the shore. And actually, his first duathlon, he had the bike racked on the back of the car, and I came along only 12 years of age, racked my bike in the back of the car thinking I was going along with him. He looked out he often tells the story, he looks out the bedroom window and he's sure enough, like, the organizer will turn me away, sure I'm too young. And much to his anger, when we went to pay for the entry, the organizer goes, he's 16. And my dad goes, no, he's 12. And man just kept going back, no, he's 16. So ended up I was allowed to do it anyway. And yeah, from there I went into 1500 meter running. That was my forte for a large part of my junior athletics. Still kept the hand in with the duathlon, but mainly viewed it as cross training for the running. And moved away from hurling. I didn't have the hand-eye coordination for it. Beat many lads to the ball, but when I got to it, I was useless. And the coaches, fair on them at the time, they did highlight and say, look, you've got the fitness, you may go into a sport that actually is going to highlight your strengths. So transition into the running there. But it's mad how, as Donnacha mentioned, Eamon Tilly. So when I started in triathlon, I went to one of the Talent ID days. But Eamon at the time was over the junior program. And good few years before Donnacha got into the sport, but he highlighted me as a junior and let me on the development program. Similar to Donnacha, well, maybe not as much. I didn't know how to swim, but I wasn't my strongest discipline. And similar talks with him, and he was like, right, you can run, you can bike, but the swim needs work. So the pitching time trials against each other, and I got lapped in the pool loads of times. And then it was a 1500 meter time trial at the end of the talent ID. So I was like, right, they're off to make a show of me in the pool. I'm going to try and make a show of them on the track. And from that there, yeah, there was loud on the team. Obviously, when I did the Leaving Cert, I went to England to study sports science. So I probably disappeared off the Irish scene. I come home and raced the national series and that. But yeah, it wasn't until after COVID where I relocated to come back home that myself and Donnacha got paired together. And it seemed like the story did a full circle again. Eamon Tilly was in charge of para-tri, and through one thing and another, Eamon put us both together, and that's how we ended up racing with each other.
Me and Sean are going to have to start going to Talent ID days for everything. Can you do this? No, that's okay. Come on in.
We'll find a way. I don't get, Donnacha, how this whole thing has not been shut down when you were asked to go down to the ID day. You're like, no, I can't swim. Why did you go, like, what part made you go down when you knew, okay, I can't get in that water? What made you
Yeah.
go, right, let's start learning? Because, like, you're doing well at the football seems to be going pretty good. To throw
Mm.
yourself into a brand new sport like that, and obviously a lot harder to learn new skills that way.
Yeah.
How? Why?
I don't know. There's just something I suppose I always like a challenge, I guess, to my detriment. And it's probably something I've done all my life, or really since losing my sight, is like I kind of throw myself into something and see, okay, can I do this or can I not? And yeah, I guess like I kind of went into triathlon, well, not the Talent ID day, and was more with a view to doing duathlons, finding a guide, finding someone, and kind of giving competitive sport a bit more of a try. I think at the time football was kind of, Joe, it had gone as far as it was going to go in my eyes. I didn't think it was going to go any further, and I kind of wanted a little bit more out of sport. And then, yeah, got into the cycling and the running, and it was funny because Eamon actually paired me up with his brother Dave. He was my first ever guide and kind of my mentor, I guess, at the time. Like Dave is a hugely experienced triathlete, kind of knew the ins and outs. And yeah, he kind of taught me everything I know. But the first time I met him, yeah, like he was saying, oh yeah, we're going to do this race and this race. And I was like, look, I don't know what Eamon's told you, but I said, like, actually can't swim yet. And he goes like, you can't swim? He was like, I'm sure, yeah, it'll be grand. He's just like, okay, maybe it's not this hard. So until yeah, he took me to the pool, and oh man, like I couldn't, probably swam like 4 strokes, and then I had to stop, swim 4 strokes again. And like by the time I got to the deep end, I was hanging on to the lane rope. Like that's my first memory going to a pool. And yeah, just really struggled with it. But I kind of, I don't know, I had in my head that I committed now, and I had to, I suppose, prove to myself that okay, I'm not letting this swim defeat me. I'm gonna conquer it no matter no matter what it takes. And yeah, look, it took a long time, probably like 6 to 12 months, and eventually cracked the swim. And it's kind of once you swim your first length, I don't know if there's going to be many people listening who Well, it's the funny thing with triathlon. A lot of guys who do run triathlon, swimming's the last sport they take up.
Yep.
But I'd say, yeah, a lot of people probably can relate. But like once you kind of crack the first length, you can string two lengths together, string 100 meters together, and then it's a case just building it up slowly and slowly. And yeah, I got there eventually, but yeah, it took a lot of work.
Well, talk about long swimming courses. Sean Coffey is doing it in 35 years and he still can't swim a length. So
I can't crack that length.
yeah, you can't crack that length.
I
I just want to ask, because obviously communication. I'm talking about swimming. I've not the greatest swimmer, and athletic Sean. We'll just to avoid confusion. The real athlete Sean might be able to weigh in on it. Communication is obviously a good thing. We know from some of the flying we've done, we'd sit in tandem. You can't see the other person, so you have to be very good at talking. When you're in the water, very difficult to hear what the bubbles are saying behind you, or particularly when it comes to learning and obviously visually impaired, it's obviously a scarier factor as well, or maybe it wasn't, but for me the water is a scary element and always has been, and I do it and I build confidence. What was it like for those couple of instances, obviously, and the trust you have in the coach, and as a pair, how do you communicate these kind of things when it comes to swimming and developing your swimming?
It's definitely something that's individual to each pair. Obviously, we haven't mentioned the fact that we compete against athletes. Some of them are partially sighted, Donnacha's fully blind. But it does help. The more time we train with each other, we kind of found what was the optimal way of communicating. Obviously, we can't use verbal, as you said there. So what we found that worked for us was knowing the course in advance. So the day before the race, we get to practice the route. So I'll map that out in the back of Donnacha's hand. So he has an image in his head then of right, it's straight out, 90 degrees right, and there might be a wee bit of a loop. So he knows the specifics of it. And then he's just waiting for me to tap him, a good hard tap on the head to signify, right, this is it. Can't be a gentle one because you're bumping off each other anyway. Swimming with each other is very much like running a 1500 meters or running cross country. You're bumping off each other. It's just confrontational. But yeah, just one thing there. Donnacha hasn't done himself enough credit there. He actually never seen anyone swim, so he didn't know what swimming looked like to begin with.
Whoa.
That's what I was trying to get at.
Yeah,
because
it needs to be
obviously
said.
from 10.
Yeah,
Yeah, I never saw him as a kid or anything like so. I never really got in the pool or got in the water or anything like that.
So what did that mean for you, Donnacha? And they're like, oh, just we're gonna do the front crawl here. Sorry, what
I
does
was
it
like,
mean?
I knew you get in the water, move your arms, and I was like, okay, what way is this? But like, I think in fairness to Dave, when I started on Sean's, very much like that as well. Is like the best thing for me is like someone being in the water with me and like physically moving my hand. So like reaching out in front to get a nice long stroke, popping your elbow for the catch, pulling back and like just repeating that. And like I used to practice that on dry land just to get my arms used to that movement. And then in the water, just someone being in the water with me. And the biggest thing for me really was like just trying to be relaxed enough in the water so you can breathe properly and you're not too tense, you're not like fighting the water, I guess. And that was probably the harder thing for me to kind of overcome. And I think like when I started swimming, like I kind of reached out to a few other athletes, blind athletes who are swimmers. And a lot of those guys, what they found easiest was like just remove some of the elements. So like take the breathing out of it. So just put on a snorkel and swim and build up the muscular endurance that way. And slowly remove the snorkel, get relaxed doing the stroke while breathing, and you're adding in more and more elements then that way. So that's how it worked for me. It's probably different for other people, but yeah, that's how I got the hang of it anyway. So,
but it is comical because we've had a lot of swim specialist coaches, be
mm,
that through national programs or like outsourcing to different people, and they seem to forget he's fully blind. So they'll be there on the poolside doing these lovely demonstrations of like, and you're just kind of, he's wasted here. He can't see
I'm just
that.
like,
But like
yeah,
his swim was obviously refined to a point where we could swim competitively in our race, but to take it up a notch, we've had to kind of think outside the box to make the small tweaks. So it's just even small degrees and lifting the elbow, hand position, and type of things. We I've done a lot of work on poolside, manually moving them into the positions. But what we find worked best was, the aftershocks, those headphones, the bone
Headphones.
conductors.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I'll connect that to my phone and I'll call Donnacha off my phone. So I'm talking to him while
Ah,
he's under the water,
yes.
so he can
Mm.
hear me on the fly. Because traditionally, a swim coach will say, right, I want you to do this for a length. You could do the lengths and you go, did I do it? No, do it again. But you don't get that feedback during.
Right.
It's annoying when you complete a whole session and you might only do one of the lengths properly. Whereas when you have the feedback live, we find that like
Yeah,
quite
really good. Yeah.
impactful.
It's great that technology, I suppose, can play a factor into the development. And obviously, those 1% we're talking about, when you look at the scale of kind of development and the time over how long it will take, you can reduce those times for instant feedback, which is obviously better for you when one sense is gone. So instant feedback
Mm.
will help you feel, I suppose, it is. Are you noticing that the little bit of use of technology in that is making the bigger difference?
Yeah, massive. Like, and like as Sean said, like it's like I've had that in the past where the coach would tell me to do something, get to the opposite side, and they're like, "No, you done that for one stroke." And I'm like, "Okay, but I took about 50 there in that link, so which one stroke was it?"
Which one was good? It's
Yeah.
22nd one.
Yeah. So like yeah, it's good having that instant feedback is great because like I can instantly feel okay, that's what it should feel like. And swimming is such an unnatural thing to do anyway. Like you're putting your arms in position that they shouldn't they're normally not in, I guess. So it's like just getting the feel and the muscle memory for that has been great. And like obviously outside of swimming, then like the technology I use for like take my bike sessions, my runs, all that kind of stuff, that's all accessible for me as well. So when I'm running, I can get my heart rate, my paces read back to me from my watch, the same on the bike, so I can have my heart rate and power read back to me, so I know, I'm executing the sessions as prescribed, and I'm doing the right intensity and stuff like that. And like, yeah, just from that sense, like, yeah, I suppose the sport wouldn't be possible without that technology.
How when you're doing your training, then like you have to
Mm.
work with Sean then on Sean. Assuming your training will be similar then, or is it different, Sean? How does that work? And because I see in the background, like your big background is in cycling and stuff like that as well. We're gonna get into this tandem biking and stuff in a second, but like, how did that work with trying to go from your own background and then trying to link it into Donnacha and then get that training together? Like,
Yeah, it is something that I don't think we give it the credit it deserves. So in terms of training with Donnacha, in the ideal scenario, Donnacha would have five guides. So he'd have his training guides for his swim, bike, and run, and that he could really just nail his sessions with that. And then I'd go off and do my training. We'd link up every now and again and work on the smaller fine stuff like handling the bike, transitions, things like that. That's the ideal world, but probably between me starting with Donnacha to now, we haven't actually had any like training guides to step in to take the load off me, which quite often meant I was doubling up on sessions. So I do 2 to 3 key sessions a week with Donnacha, but then I need to make sure obviously I'm faster than Donnacha in order to communicate to him on the fly. So as I said, most people when they ask, like, even on the run, so Donnacha, you'd probably turn out a high 16-minute 5K at the moment. To run with Donnacha and communicate with him, you need to be running 15 low or faster. Because if you're on your rivet, you're no good to Donnacha because you can't tell him where to go.
yeah.
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 And then on the
Donnacha,
bike,
I'll guide you down to the pub, and that'll be about it. Now you won't be getting 15 minutes out of me. I tell you
Well,
that for free.
I'll bring a spare stick so you can find your way back to as well.
But it is obviously, and it's something you see in when you look at guided sports. The athlete has to be that little bit above in order to have the capacity. How Donnacha, obviously, there's a lot of trust in you in your guide.
Mhm.
Obviously, you've spent a lot of time together. Good, Sean. I want to just know, is that a lot of pressure on you?
on me,
Yeah, to be in the best physical, because it is a pair race. The athlete relies on the guide, you rely on the athlete. You both are surviving together. So, in terms of being ready for a race, and as you've said, being those couple of seconds quicker or more comfortable over a distance, do you feel that pressure to be there in the best shape as you can for Donnacha?
Yeah, and I think where the main pressure comes. So first and foremost, my job is to get Donnacha around the course on a real basic level, and then when you take it up a notch, my role is to get us around all of them safely but as fast as possible. But on the bike in our racing, that's where I can contribute the most. So I'm not allowed to drag him in the swim because we get a penalty. I'm not allowed to drag him on the run because we get a penalty. I have to make the tactical calls, but on the bike, I'm expected to be as a glorified time trialist on the bike. So the bike is the one where I can make or break the race for us potentially if I'm on a good day or a bad day, and even like a tactical call if I make a bad judgment, in terms of surging, and then it costs us a race. Well, that falls on me. If we overcook a corner and we crash, you can't go blaming Donnacha because it's me that ultimately has control of the brakes and the gears and the steering. And if I don't communicate the severity of the turn to Donnacha, the bike just won't go around the bend for a start. So yeah, there is a high amount of pressure just cognitively. So the first race I did with Donnacha, brain went to mush because they're thinking for two. It was so new to me. Made some bad calls and ultimately cost us the race. And then a few weeks later, through spending more time with Donnacha, I just got better at it. But it was such a shock to me the first time I did a race with Donnacha, even before we actually got to the race, just being in an airport with Donnacha and guiding you around. So small curbs, lips, turns, all this. I was like, whoa, this is. I got back to the room. I said, I'm wrecked tired. And he explained it to me. He's like, yeah, that's normal. He's like, you're thinking for two. So
Yeah.
it started to dawn on me. I was like, oh, I'm going to race with him. But
Like going for a walk with Sean.
On your end, Donnacha, then, like, so you had a guide and stuff before this, so
Mm.
like you obviously you had done different events and stuff like that. So when you met with Sean and you're going through everything in the airport and Sean's going through everything for the first time, and I was reading into how he's got on that first rate in European Championships and just trying to recover and stuff from the accidents and stuff happening at that and the lefts and rights and all the rest. Like, what was going through your mind, Donnacha, when you guys made that transition? Had you guys known each other and talked to each other a good bit before then, or was Sean very new on the block to knowing the person at all? And
Um,
what was going through
yeah,
your mind?
yeah, like he was very new. Like we'd only met for the first time, I think 2 weeks before the Europeans. And like he came down, we went for a spin on the tandem out along the cycle path in Clontarf. That was his first time ever being on a tandem 2 weeks before the
Oh
Europeans.
my God.
And went for a run just to get briefer, just to show him the rudiments of like what I need is from a guiding perspective. And like the biggest thing, like I gave him the tandem to take home with him so he could practice a little bit. But yeah, like the biggest thing I said is like, look, there's zero expectations on you for this race. Like it's your first one. So look, I said we're going to make mistakes. And that's normal, that happens. So look, just don't lose the head, I guess. And yeah, we made a lot of mistakes in the race, but I think Sean was quite down and out about it afterwards. But like I said to him, I was like, look, this happens, and I said, look, we'll sit down, make a list of what went wrong and what we need to do to kind of um work on that, I guess. And basically that night the next night we flew out to Turkey for a World Cup race, and we were out there for the pretty much a full week, I guess, prepping for that race. And each day we just worked on something small, like got more familiar with each other, running together, calling obstacles, just getting on the bike a little bit more, swimming. And yeah, then that race that went really well for us. Like we actually won that race the following week. So yeah, like I think that's the biggest thing like that we do, and we do that. The list is getting smaller, thankfully enough. But like after every race, we do sit down and we kind of identify where we went wrong, what we did wrong in that race, and that kind of what we need to work on going into the next one. And yeah, just over time, that's kind of just built up, and like we have that trust now. And like even in racing, like Sean doesn't have to do as much talking because we can tell by body language, or even so going around a corner or curb, Sean can just give me a little bit of an elbow or nudge instead of saying, "Oh, this is a 45-degree left turn. on a downhill or something like that. I don't need that much information thrown at me in a race. But yeah, like yeah, we've just built that communication and that understanding up over Joe race after race after race and training sessions. So
And even if Sean had a near miss, he doesn't have to tell you. So your list is definitely getting smaller. He's like, wow, Donnacha didn't see that one. I'm not adding that to the list. That's the end of that one.
Yeah, because like the guys I do train with, like a lot of the time, if there's like I do a lot of my running out in Phoenix Park and stuff, and become quite busy out there with people and dogs and everything. And like Stephen, like the guy I do my long runs with, like he says it to me sometimes. He goes, sometimes it's just easier not to tell you what's going on around you and just try and get you through it rather than explain it. Like so.
I was running around Dublin though. Racing is easy compared to even just going from your place to a track. Curbs are so narrow. People are going about their business. Like Dublin Marathon was a breeze because at least everyone's moving in the same direction.
Same direction.
The only part was the bottlenecks. You know, you're coming out of the Phoenix Park. I kind of had to look ahead and like, right, we need to move on here and not get pipped. But yeah, it's different races, different dynamics, I suppose.
I love the way I heard you describe the Dublin Marathon as like an end of season blowout when throughout the year you're doing, correct me if I'm wrong, the para-triathlon, 700-meter swim, 20K bike, and a 5K run. And then you just went, end of the season. Sure, we'll celebrate by doing a 40K run. How was that?
Yeah, it's funny because like I live on Simmons Court Road, so like the marathon, like it passes the bottom of my road every year. So like I've got out to spectate it a lot, and I've always wanted to do it. And like we were kind of saying, Sean was like, sure, yeah, let's sign up for this year. We'll do it at the end of the cycle. Like he goes, like, yeah, it can be just an end of year thing. And I was like, okay, grand. And and I was like, are you sure I'm able for this? And he goes like, yeah, I wouldn't be telling you to do it if I didn't think you were. So I was like, okay, I'll have to just trust the process here and just commit. And yeah, I absolutely loved it. Like I think just I hadn't run anything further than I think like about 15 miles, I think, in my long runs. So I knew once I got to that point, anything after that was going to be like new territory for me. But yeah, I think just like even just the crowds and support and just having constantly more runners around you all the time, that's just a constant distraction nearly for me. So actually, I loved it. I can't wait to do my next one, but I don't know when that's going to be. But it's definitely something that's on the cards.
Sean, when's that next one going to be?
I'll say Dublin next year. Oh, sorry, this year.
This year, yeah.
But no, it was priceless. We were coming, I think maybe the first 5K. I could hear, so Donnacha's watch talk sometimes.
Yeah. So we like agreed a pace that we're going to go out at or whatever, and I think it was the first. Yeah, every kilometer my watch was giving me my splits, and it was like 4:10, 4:05, 4:10, and I'm like, Sean, are we running too fast here? And he was just like, oh look, there's a sign there that says.
I
you just gave me no answer.
I wouldn't give him the answer because I knew rightly, just knowing from his running, and I've had him in the lab because we have a physiology lab in Sandymount. We do a lot of testing with Donnacha, so we have a good database in Donnacha, and we're able to kind of predict where he should be even around. And I knew it was like 3 hours, 3:05 to 3 hours flat, maybe just under. It's well within him. And anytime you asked me, he was really doubting the fact that this pace might be sustainable. But you got 3:01 in the end. I know it'll haunt you until you do agree, but you were bloody close. You were on target 2:58 up until the last 5K.
Yeah, I think the 3 hour group passed us, and like the 3 hour balloon hit me on the head as it passed. And I was just like, oh, that's
so
so
not
annoying.
only could Sean light it, the balloon went
like
and smacked you
insult
one.
injury. Yeah.
What is it like, I suppose, when you're competing in races, when you have we obviously see the crowds, we get involved, but the noise level for you in some aspects of that race, when you pass by the crowds, the noise, no matter how tired you are, the hairs on your neck will stand up. For me, anyway, it's amazing some of the support that comes out in some of the areas. How is that for you, and what does that do for you during a race, in the sense of just getting that buzz from a crowd as you're running, and just maintaining your concentration on what you're doing?
Yeah, no, like it has the same effect on me, really. It's I just find it really like exhilarating, I guess. Yeah, it does. It puts a little bit of an extra pep in your step as you're going through that section. And like you don't feel anything, you don't feel the tiredness kind of leaves the body, leaves the legs until you're out the other side and you're like, oh, this feels tough again. But it gives you a nice little boost, and yeah, it's great. Like for the triathlon racing, it's a little bit different. Like it's only on the run you get to hear those crowds and the people shouting, because obviously you're not hearing anything in the water, and the same on the bike. Yeah, it's great just having that support there. And yeah, and I think that's probably one of the things I like about the triathlon too, is the transition. Like everything's based around that area, so you're coming back to that. The music's pumping, crowd, people are shouting at you. Like it just gives you a real kind of buzz.
Oh, that's phenomenal. I'm just, as you're saying now, I was just thinking, trying to go up Heartbreak Hill, and just that, not knowing when it ends and hearing the crowd get louder and louder, just waiting for that little tap, go left turn here at 9 degrees, go down the hill. It's handy. I said you were begging for it, especially
At the
going for that
hills
pace.
before, yeah, because like we'd heard all about this Heartbreak Hill in Dublin Marathon. Like, we're trying to figure out where it's going to be, and like I'd say we're from about mile, I don't know, 17 or 18 onwards. We're like, there's always little drags, and we're like, was that Heartbreak Hill? Was that Heartbreak Hill?
So Donnacha being blind and me from Monaghan with no geographical knowledge of Dublin.
Yeah, Sean knows about Sandymount, and that's about the only part of Dublin he knows. So.
I recognise the spire.
Yeah.
And the road out of it. That's about it.
You'd obviously done a few. Have you done a few marathons, Sean? I know you did a lot of 70.3s and stuff like that. So you've probably done a few full Ironman and stuff like that as well. So do you keep that trend up throughout the year, and that was just another day out for you, or?
Pretty much, but obviously with our racing, we were back-to-back weeks on the trot there, so we couldn't really give the marathon a good shot. For Donnacha, it was just a debut at the distance to show him, like, look, this is what you can do, what your body's capable of, because it is a different type of fatigue. We do get obviously severe fatigue in the 1 hour racing, but it's different type. So my view of it was, as Donnacha's coach, not only is it a good experience to show you what you can do, but you learn from it, because you realize how deep you can actually go in fatigue and come out the other side of it. But yeah, I thought brilliant experience. That was my first time actually to sit in the back seat, just take him around the course and enjoy it. I actually enjoyed the experience. I know you didn't enjoy the last week.
No, not the last 5K anyway.
He thinks there's something sadistic in me. They just love seeing him the hurt, because I get a front row seat. Fair on though, most of the races we do, you're vomiting at the finish, like you full on go to the well when we need you to.
Yeah, like and that's like what Sean was saying. Like in terms of the sprint triathlon, it's completely different type of pain, I guess, to the marathon as well. Like you're just flooded in lactate by the time you're hitting the finish line. So it's either get sick or just collapse to the ground. Whereas the marathon, like you could just feel that burn in your legs probably for the last maybe 5 or 6K, and you're thinking, God, can I last another whatever 25, 30 minutes with this feeling? And you can push on through it. And yeah, it's a different kind of different type of hurt.
Yeah. But back to your original question, yeah, I've done a few. I don't know, I'm planning to do another one this year in April, Boston in the UK. So I was fourth in it 2 years ago. Came back home, so the parents would be talking to people around the town. Well, Sean was fourth in the Boston Marathon. People would be thinking I got a night contract. Then it was Boston, the UK. Not Boston as we know it. 2:32 wouldn't get you much in the actual Boston Marathon.
It's always bad as Hollywood Wicklow. Getting that 1 hour push, like Sean, when you're pushing Donnacha along, and at the end he's got to vomit as his coach, and like you're talking about like week to week races, is it mentally tough to say the first few times trying to figure out how far you could really push him? Was it hard going, okay, I know he's going in a very bad way when he finishes this, but he really wants to be pushed very hard to finish this race? How was that dynamic the first few times, and where is it like now? Because you obviously got to, we're going to talk about in a second, getting to the world stage and podium.
Yeah, like definitely you are taking a stab in the dark the first few times you do it. Like I wouldn't have known the field around us well enough to say, right, there's lads up ahead, we're going after them to get them. Obviously, you know your favourites, you know who's quite a bit stronger than you. So if they're going to go by us, is it safe to go with them or not? Or are we just going to blow up in advance? One thing I did get wrong maybe a few times is Donnacha asked me how long's left. And I know it was my 1500 meters and my 800 meters.
So cruel.
But I had to get him to commit. And it's worked a few times where you've committed early, just you've a really strong kick when you do want to use it in that blue. Like we've about 100 meters of blue carpet, but we like to have the race tied up before we hit that. You don't want to leave it down to there. Because if you imagine if we're coming to overtake someone as well, we need to make sure we've got the room to do it because essentially there's four people going by each other.
Yeah.
So yeah, the tactics, you have to time your overtakes well. So knowing the course is essential there. But yeah, there's a few races where you're looking at lads and you're kind of going, it's going to be tight. I can't say it to them though because I need them to commit, and I'm like, yeah, it's going to be a tight one here. Like there's race in Italy last year. The lads behind, we were leading the race for the majority, and on I think the second lap of the run, the Italians caught up with us. And I was like to Donnacha, I could hear them coming. You could hear the footsteps. When you hear two people chasing you down, it sounds like a galloping horse. And I was like, look, they're going to come by us here now. It's up to us to just commit with it. I was like, if we don't go with them, the lads behind them are going to come and get us. And sure enough, you dug in really, really deep. And I think they only got maybe 4 or 5 meters on us towards the end. I was so close to getting
Yeah, yeah,
we could have done with those points as well, but yeah, it was a really, really big fight. Like you went to the well big time there. And that was a week after you had food poisoning as well.
food poisoning as well. Yeah,
yeah. So I'm really happy with you that day to have that fight in you after you've not been well for the week before. But yeah, it's touch and go sometimes. The racing's very tight in the men's field, like mere seconds separate everyone. As Donnacha mentioned there's a race. We had bad transitions and we were just shot out the back. The following week, we worked on the transitions, found a couple of seconds. We weren't any fitter, but all of a sudden we won a race. So it just goes to show how tight our racing is at the moment.
You said there's not a frequent
Donnacha, obviously when your watch beeps a kilometer into your 800-meter sprint, what names do you want to call them? There's obviously that key element of the watch going, we're still here at this pace. What does that do for you? Because I know what I do to my version of Sean if he did that to me.
Yeah, we do have a rule, whatever we say to each other on the course stays on the course. So so we don't take it personal.
That doesn't work for us when we run a podcast. It all goes out. We air our grievances on this. Sean, you touched there, we were talking about that. We talked about how races are very frequent, and you talked there about a point system and that it's very close field. How important are these point systems and what's it go towards?
Obviously, it's a 1 year window for us in the lead up to Paralympics. It's not the best system. Obviously, no system. They all have their own flaws, but ours is the best. Your average of 3 races, so your best 3 races count. We probably were one of the more consistent parents across the year, and we didn't really get rewarded for our consistency. Because you imagine three races, you could have one really good one, which some of the athletes around us got like a phenomenal day. They might have just got very lucky in the fact that, like in our races, there's crashes, as you can imagine, with tandems. So the favourite might actually be out of the race. Someone might have food poisoning. With a year, a lot can happen. And if you're not on the start list, you can't really avail of that. But you can't race every race because you'd be extremely tired. So chasing points, it's attrition. Like it does break you down throughout the year. But like realistically, if you get a win, it's worth that many points that it puts you miles ahead of everyone else. So we had a few silvers and a few bronze, but we didn't actually get a win in the past 12 months of that Paralympic cycle. So we just missed out by the one slot, unfortunately, which is Donnacha's second time to be in that scenario. So the factoring, I don't know if you're aware of that, but we have a small head start on the guys that have partially sighted, and that's been reducing and reducing. So it's getting smaller. And off the back of that, which means we have to get faster, even to finish in the same position. So the goalposts are kind of shifted since Tokyo. Paris again shifted. So it's getting tighter racing, which is great for the sport, but it's a very hard time for a fully blind athlete to be chasing points in the lead up to the games.
Why is it shortened? Is that based on you guys hitting podiums, or is that just based on what's it based on?
Yeah, so it's based on podium performances. Yeah, so they kind of look at the number of B1 athletes getting on podiums or getting wins, and then they decide then on that. Like it's World Triathlon who kind of come up with this factoring system, and it's a little bit of a black box, really. We don't know what kind of decision factors or whatever go into that. But yeah, kind of at the start of every year, they kind of release their rule book, and they might have the factoring updated then and that, and they'll just give you the time, and they're like, "Okay, this is what you have to race with. It's up to you now to either race or you can or can't race."
Yeah,
So
it's true.
yeah,
Probably not a
Obviously,
choice for you.
yeah,
I understand. Obviously, there's a factor like they add in these factors. So obviously, time is one of the benefits because there's partial sighted athletes, but you are still at that disadvantage. The fact that you're racing quick, you still have a disadvantage, and trying to put a time on that is a really difficult thing to do. Or,
yeah.
in a broad stroke, say, well, do you know what? Actually, being fully sighted, it's only worth 15 seconds. Like, how
Mm.
do you quantify that? I suppose it is like there's definitely an advantage to having partial sight. You can see things, you can anticipate something coming up, whereas you're fully in the trust of your guide.
Mm.
There has to be a reward, in my opinion, a reward for that partnership, first of all, and also that disadvantage. Is that just because so many are getting so good that it's just, again, I'm probably echoing the same question, that it's just we need to reduce it to it's almost becoming the same race.
Yeah, like I know, like World Triathlon, they are working on a system. So, like, say in track and swimming and stuff like that, B1 athletes compete against B1 athletes. They don't have this mixed classification, and unfortunately, just in triathlon, because it's still a relatively new sport, it's just down to the depth of field. But it's probably Joe not encouraging B1 athletes or totally blind athletes to get involved in as well, because you're a new athlete coming into the sport as a B1, like it's gone that competitive now. Your first race is going to be spat out the back and probably have a really demoralizing race and not want to do it again. So it's a bit of a catch-22 really. But yeah, like race wise, like on the day, Joe, anything can really happen. But I think yeah, like the real advantage like partially sighted athletes I think have in terms is more around the training side outside of racing. So obviously, like you probably wouldn't really see it unless you're like, probably if people listening now are just like, yeah, what's the big difference? Like, but you actually don't realize how big that difference is until you actually go to a race and see it for yourself. And a
Mm.
lot of my other guides have said that. It's like once they go to a race and see B3 athletes just warming up on their own, doing your own thing, walking around, like the guides nowhere in sight. They're kind of like, what the hell is going on here? Like. And they're like,
They're
this
able to
isn't
wave at
normal.
each other in the crowd.
Yeah,
Oh, there you
exactly.
Although the worst thing is when we're in the hotel because we're all generally staying in the same hotel. I remember my first race with Donnacha. I could see these lads going off for breakfast, and I was like, oh, wait a second. I was like, Donnacha, why he's going to get his own breakfast? And I was like, yeah, yeah, yeah. No, we're competing against lads that they can see quite a bit. So yeah, it was quite a shock initially. And as we said there, it's not a perfect system, but I think what hit us bad now and it was quite a big thing to overcome was just as we were coming into the Paris cycle, the overnight they took 45 seconds of us, and we were like, "Crap, where the hell are we going to find? We need to find 45 seconds to finish in the same position
In
that
the
we
same
were
position.
the year in November the year before."
Mm,
So we
like
kind of had to think
2022,
outside the
yeah.
box. So like we do kind of pride ourselves on the kind of the innovation in the bike and the tandem, even our tethers. So none of this equipment's standardized yet. There are rules you have to conform to, but it's open to you how how much you want to toe the line. You have to obviously abide by the rules, but there are loopholes. Like a bit like Formula One, you'll read the rule book once to understand it, and secondly to see right. what loopholes are there in this that we can exploit. We're probably a bit of a pain in the ass the World Triathlon at this stage because we tested a few different things. But yeah, like I think when you're in that field where you're competing at a disadvantage with having no sight, you kind of have to look for new avenues to exploit to make it a fair race. The most fair race would be fully blind against fully blind. And if you actually look at the starts in the Paralympics, there was very few fully blind athletes even qualified, let alone were there to be at the front end of the race. And so it is getting very tough for a fully blind athlete.
Does that not kind of take out the equity in it, where you're supposed to be giving someone the leg up to achieve, in the Paralympics, and that being okay, if you're a B1 athlete, surely there should be a place for four. Doesn't matter, you can still go to the Paralympics, but there is a space for 5, 6, 10 B1 athletes, regardless of, okay, but out of the world rankings, they have to be the top 5 or 6 of those athletes. Surely that at least gets you to wear the tricolour, go to a Paralympics. And okay, you may not get the gold, silver, or bronze on the day, or maybe you might just have that race. Like, is that not something that can be considered in terms of allocation of places? So at least everyone gets their day, everyone gets an Olympics.
Yeah, it's a tough one, like and like it's something like in fairness to World they do look at these things and see what they can do to make it a more level playing field, and they are good around the inclusion and inclusivity side of things. But I suppose like they're not looking at maybe LA now, for instance. They're probably looking at Joe the Brisbane, the Paralympics, Olympics after that, the Olympics after that, that far ahead. Unfortunately for us, that'll be too late. But yeah, like they are looking, and like the thing is, like as I said, it's a very new sport. Like this has only been going on probably 10 years or so for parasport. That's relatively new. Whereas a lot of the other sports are well established at this stage, so they've kind of ironed out all those teething issues. Yeah, so like there are nations raising these questions as well, other nations, and World Triathlon are hearing about it. So it's kind of up to them now whether they kind of do something about it or not.
Yeah.
Switching gears a small bit, back in October 2023, you were in Malaga
Mm.
for how was that event without spoiling it?
Yeah, it was. I'm trying to think now back that
Okay,
far.
my mind, the way I have
Sean has
notes there, I
made it
think
so
I have it
ominous.
pinned.
It
But
could have been a
the
stag
world
party.
power, right? No,
Yeah, 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 yeah,
to me that
yeah, yeah,
sounds a big deal. The world, but is that
yeah.
it's the
So
end of another race? So what is that?
it was a World Cup race. So like there's different tiers of racing and para-triathlon. So like there's continental cups, which is probably the lowest tier. Then a step above that would be your World Cup racing, then your World Series, and then your championship races.
Yeah.
So like we I think we'd raced Worlds maybe 3 or 4 weeks before that, but we were both sick for Worlds and we didn't have a great day, to be honest. So we're a little bit annoyed. And then 2 weeks later, we raced the World Cup race in Alhambra in Portugal and finished fourth by like, I don't know, like 8 seconds or something. And we ended up getting a penalty. So we would have got a
Yeah.
podium there. And
We love to see
yeah,
them penalties, especially when they're in front of you.
and yeah, and then we had Malaga. Then we are like, okay, we're going to get this one last go here just to finish the season on a bit of a high, anyway. And
Don't forget the original course.
oh yeah, yeah. But like, I don't know. We've a bit. I tend to have a bit of a monkey on my back when it comes to races in Spain for some reason. I've never had a race in Spain that went well. So I was like, all right, I have to go here and have a good race at least. I'll get that out of my head that Spain's a bad hunting ground for me. But yeah, I went to the race. They were quite disorganized, to be honest. Like there's a lot of hanging around for recce's. You're sitting in the sun for like 2 hours waiting for a swim recce. We're like, what the hell do they need to do here to make this ready? Like, and then done the bike course. The bike course was like was it in a port or something, Sean? But like there was like
Yeah.
little tiny speed bumps, little
Oh,
they're
yeah,
I know the
yeah.
ones that they're around UCD, but like there's like 20 of those per lap, and we had 3 laps to do. So you could go like 50 meters on the bike, slow right down, go over a speed bump, speed up for 50 meters, slow right down, over a speed bump. And I was like, this hardly is the course. So yeah, there's a big hullabaloo that night in the briefing. Blah, blah. They said they weren't going to change it. Decided the morning of the race to change it. I think it was like literally 20 minutes before the race start. They told athletes, okay, the race courses or the bike course has changed. So we're like, what the hell has it changed to us? So we're kind of racing without knowing what the hell we were letting ourselves in for.
Yeah.
Because you said earlier, Sean, that when you're doing races, you get there first and do the course and stuff. So you put in the back of where we're going. So to have a
Yeah.
brand new, like, it'd be madness for any race, but let alone what you guys were up against.
Yeah, and
Mm.
especially on a tandem, because like you can imagine on a flat course, the two of us, like you'd be sitting at 50, 60k quite easily on it. And if we were to hit one of the speed bumps, like tandem puncture quite a bit, because you imagine there's way the two of us up,
Wait,
sitting
yeah.
majority of it over the back wheel. It'd puncture on a very small speed bump. Never mind those short, the really short ones.
Yeah,
You have to,
yeah,
no matter what speed you hit them at, you go flying on
yeah.
them. And originally they said, all right, we'll find we'll compromise, we'll unscrew the ones you bolt in the ground. They were going to unscrew a meter wide, was it? And we said, well, hold on, what happens if there's three
Two
tandems kind
bikes.
of coming in
One
on
Yeah,
pass
the
and
whole?
the other, yeah.
yeah.
Then they realized it was like, right, okay, we can't do that. New course. And then they're like, all right, where are we going? So you come out of the water and you're kind of going, we just have to follow wherever there's bollards and things like that. Just follow the course around. So the first lap, you're pushing because obviously you're trying to stay in the race, but you're kind of going, I'm not sure what's coming up next. So you be coming around a bend, complete blind corner, and you're really hoping that it doesn't just tighten in. But yeah, that first lap, you're kind of racing where you're trying to get a feed for the course. But by the end of the 5 laps, we were like, right, we know it's like the back of our hand. But it is an advantage knowing the course.
Which one of you was more nervous in that first lap?
Probably me. It's
Yeah, I'd say Sean, yeah, because it's an advantage not seeing what's going on sometimes, like, yeah, like and that's the good thing about being in the back of the tandem. You're not worried about handling or brake or anything. It's just like head down and pedal, so it's not too bad. But yeah, and like I think we got out of the water. That was one of our better swims. I think we got out of the water maybe second or third.
with the
Got onto the
Mexicans.
bike. Yeah, didn't have a clue what the course was going to be, so it was like a bit of a mystery. But then, like after second lap, we kind of knew the gist of it, and got out after the run in second place, I think. And it was actually like you were talking about the atmosphere and stuff. Malaga was one of those races where it was a brilliant atmosphere because it was like
Yeah.
just such a party town. There were like loads of Irish people there, so we're getting plenty of
On the
shouts,
on the
plenty
walk
of
home.
yeah.
10 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, so there's like the atmosphere of it was brilliant. But yeah, I ended up finishing second, but like the win again was, I guess, the kind of like story of her life, just maybe like 12 seconds ahead.
Yeah.
But it was annoying because we found out afterwards the course they'd actually shortened it by like 500 meters.
And the lad in
Um
front of us was dying of
Dying.
death.
Yeah,
So
so
Oh,
our
this
course, you
is
come round dead turns. So as someone's coming out of the 180-degree turn, I'm kind of sizing them up and I'm feeding them. I was like, they look like they're suffering. We've got them. But equally, as we were coming out of a turn, there's like 4 or 5 lads coming after us in the pack, and they're like, shit, they're looking strong. But like on the bike, it was a dogfight. Like the Greeks were overtaking us in some of the straights. And then to get back in front of them, we outbrake them coming into a corner, brake really, really late, which is risky enough doing on the tandem, but we kind of were throwing everything we could at them that day. And I think their chain came off on the cobbles, which thankfully took them out of the race. And then the Polish were coming after us. And I just shouted out to Donnacha, I was like, the Polish are walking with their bike. I think they completely had a mechanical. And we're like, and some of them are like Formula One races where,
yeah,
the white
just
smoke comes
something
out of
goes
an
wrong.
engine and you're going, right, that's them out. Uh, But yeah, no, it's excitement from a race you don't really get from the solo race, and because the fields are so tight, you get sucked in. The hour of racing goes by so fast,
Hmm.
and yeah, it's like we do multiple laps, so you kind of get a gauge of where people are on the course. So you could be coming into the turn as the guy in front of you's coming out, so you can roughly know whether they're pulling away from you more or you're chasing them down. It's not just the case like an Ironman where no one knows where anyone is. It's the glorified time trial, and whoever crosses the line at the end of the day, the times are all totted up. And with ours, you know where you are, and if you don't, there's someone on the course shouting a split at you. Like sometimes we travel with our girlfriends, and they'd be on the side of the course shouting, right, for 15 seconds up the road, get your ass in gear and go. So yeah, it's good to have that support when we have it.
Definitely sounds a lot more exciting of a race just to get that out in the hour, everything else going on. It's class.
Yeah. Oh, it flies by. Because one of my last races before I raced with Donnacha was a full distance Ironman. And then race with Donnacha, I was like, that was over in a flat. It felt like a 1,500 meter race. It felt like it was being raced.
Yeah.
So much happens. It's mad.
Yeah, just you have to like take that time to like nearly process it afterwards and be like, because like
What
there's a
happened?
lot that goes on that I don't know. Like all I hear is Sean going like, "Oh fuck." I can't ask what the hell went on there. I just wait till the end of the race to find out what happened there, and you're like screaming. Yeah, so yeah, no, it's exciting. Like, and like as Sean mentioned, like it's got that tight now that everyone's on the rivet, and like when you're on the rivet, anything can happen. So like, yeah, you're going to a race and like world number one could be there, and you don't know whether something's going to happen to him. He could drop out of the race, and then Joe, it's up for anyone, Joe, in terms of the race. So like, it's yeah, it's always a bit of excitement.
Yeah, because obviously there's for a team to win, two people have to have a good day. It's not
Hmm.
just one man. So yeah, there's that extra dynamic of you need both the athlete and the guide on their A game. So it's just another layer to it.
Just that teamwork and everything else. So this year then, is it to get the points? Have you set your races? What's the plan then for have you set out the year yet? Or is it in terms of para-triathlon, it's later in the year this all gets decided?
Yeah,
Yeah,
so obviously it's 12 months before the Paralympics. So obviously that's obviously 2028. So the pressure's kind of off this year.
Okay.
In the respect of chasing points. So we can pick and choose our races, but the main focus will be to work on our weakest discipline, which is the swim at the moment. So really taking the time to focus on the technique for Donnacha, which is something we didn't have the time to do when you're chasing the points. You kind of had to take the windows as they came to just really knuckle down and get fit. But yeah, we're having a later start to the year. So this time last year, we would have been in Abu Dhabi and then heading to Tasmania. So it would have been quite early on. We didn't really have much of a base. It's like your typical winter training. So we're planning to start our racing in June. Well, I'll let you chat through the races there, like it.
yeah. So like starting racing in June, we have like a World Series in Italy, and then the European Championships are the following week in France. And then we have a little bit of a break then, and we're going to do kind of two races back to back in Canada. And then that's kind of the World Triathlon season wrapped up. And then yeah, we're planning to dabble a little bit in the longer distance stuff. So we're looking to do a 70.3 race now in towards the end of the year, so maybe September. And yeah, just give that a crack and see how we get on with the longer stuff.
The longer stuff is a different animal in itself in terms of we've gone from an hour of maximum effort to
Mhm.
4.5, 5 hours, 4 hours of maximum effort. Does it scare you to go up to the longer distance, or, and I'll ask for both. Second question to Sean, and a coaching benefit, do you think this
Yeah.
could be a good game changer in terms of increasing capacity for the shorter races?
Yeah, no, like as in like I suppose like the marathon kind of gave me a taste of that. Like so being out there on your feet for 3 hours and being out there for a long time, so that's the longest I've ever raced. So yeah, I suppose the longer like 70.3 race, it's another step up from that again. But like kind of doing a bit more of that type of training over the winter. No, it's definitely something that kind of the body is absorbing quite well, and I think it's something that we could be quite good at, and I think it's definitely something that'll add to the shorter racing then as well. So it's kind of yeah, a bigger picture look at things rather than just focusing solely on the short, sharp racing all the time as well.
Yeah, and I think from the coaching perspective, obviously being able to hold the TT position for that amount of time, so holding it for 2 hours as opposed to 30 minutes, it's going to be it's going to have a knock-on effect. You're training to hold it for 2 hours. So then when we come back to the sprint the following year, it's going to be right. This is easy. So even just holding positions taking less energy, you're more efficient in it. You've drilled in that time in it. The whole nutrition side of things. So obviously we don't have that big of a demand on nutrition for racing for an hour, but I think by going long, you mature a lot as an athlete. You get better with knowing your body, which can only help you in the long run, both in training and racing in the future. I think the big thing I'm excited about is the bike, because typically on our courses you're ripping around for 5 laps, but there's always a cone where you have to do a 180 around. So you're getting the bike up to speed, and then you're no sooner got it up to speed than you're slamming on the brakes to take it right back down, turn around, back up to speed again. It's very stop start. Whereas it would be nice for a change to actually just sit at a really high speed, because when you get the tandem up, it kind of sits at it. And we've done a lot with the aerodynamics, so it'll be nice to actually see that over a nice fast course over a long period of time. And I think it'd be nice to showcase. Obviously, Ironman has huge following and a lot of people in the races. It'd be nice for people to actually see a tandem on a fully blind athlete, hopefully producing a world class performance on the day. It's kind of a big project we have around it, and it's a stepping stone to getting us to the pointy edge of our own sprint racing. But I think it's almost like a rite of passage. You have to go and do a 70.3, race it well, and it opens up a new capacity, similar to like the marathon. Obviously, the marathon was a bit of fun as well, and then this will be hopefully a bit of fun, all going well. But it teaches you that you can suffer for longer and have a greater appreciation of all the science that kind of comes with that.
How long have you been? How long have you got furthest distance you've done tandem bike? Have you
So
Tour
we've
of
done,
Donnacha.
yeah, the Tour of Monaghan. So we've been on the bike for like 6 hours. Uh,
6 hours?
yeah, race, or well, not racing, I guess, but like cycling around. Oh, these awful hills around Monaghan. I
The
don't know if you've ever been
cavalry.
up there. The
You were
caveat.
ready for an 70.3 after that.
Or if you do an Ironman as slow as me, that's about a normal day.
Donnacha loves coming to Monaghan for the weekends. I take him up
Oh,
Cavalry in the hills.
it's hills when you're running, hills when you're cycling. I'm surprised there's no hills in the pool as well.
Donica,
Yeah, but it's probably stood to me as well. Like so,
Yeah, and I think
Donica.
when you asked there about the amount of time on the tandem, what
Yeah.
you have to remember is his handlebars don't move, so they're fixed in the one spot. So he doesn't actually have that nice movement. On the front, it is draining as well. So like I'd get away more tighter on a tandem than I would ride my own bike because you're balancing for two, but you're not getting any coolant at the back because all the air is hitting the knee.
mm,
So he's
yeah.
cooking on the back, sweating more than a normal cyclist would, and then mechanically he's not got any of that side to side movement that you would normally. So there's a lot more load, and I don't think people really acknowledge that.
There's
So,
a lot to it that you don't really consider. And I suppose one of those things, if anyone's been on a turbo trainer without a fan, that's essentially what Donegal is doing
Yeah, pretty
because
much. Yeah.
you don't have that natural cooling effect and you're
Yeah.
just cooking where it's not good. But we've covered, obviously we've taken up a lot of your time and we've covered a lot and on a journey that's going to continue. And obviously we will get you back on to see how this 70.3 takes place. But if you were to look back at 10-year-old you now, Donica, and also Sean, in the second part of the question, how to be getting podiums, to be disappointed to be just missing out on Paralympics and all, it's still a phenomenal achievement to the 10-year-old if you were to kind of look back at your career because you only picked this back up at the end of the Leaving Cert into university. Are you impressed with how far you have come? Because very rarely athletes come onto this and acknowledge how far they've actually come because they're always worried about the next race and the 10 seconds we could have saved and stuff. But I, do you see that difference? Do you see that kind of acknowledgement of how quickly you've progressed for stepping away from sport through a lot of your developmental years to where you are today? Because to me and Sean, Bad Sean and me. It's absolutely so impressive.
Yeah, and yeah, and like as you said, like athletes are actually terrible at, I suppose, looking back and reflecting at where they have come from. Yeah, I suppose post Paris qualification this year, that was something I did take the time to do, and yeah, it is a lot when you think about it in terms of what I've done, where we've been, the amount of traveling we've done, and where how we've developed, I suppose, as athletes as well. We've come a long, a long way, and like even Joe, now and again, I do have to Joe give myself a bit of a, I suppose, a mental slapping in terms of like after a pool session, in particular the swimming, like as it's probably the one sport that pisses me off the most. And Joe, I might come out of a 4 or 5K swim set and be annoyed because I wasn't hitting the times I should have been hitting. And then I just kind of take a step back and be like, oh well, like 5 years ago I couldn't swim half a length. So take it into perspective a little bit, you know. Yeah, and like you do have to take that time to kind of just sit back and yeah, acknowledge how far you have come.
And for Sean, I suppose to kind of finish up in terms of transitioning from your own level of coaching and performance into this, could you see yourself really going back to racing for your own, or is it just a team now? As stuff is always way more fun when you're doing it as part of a team. Is this what you see as, or did you ever see yourself doing this first of all? And for you, continuing on, is this what you look forward to the most, as racing as part of this team?
Oh, definitely. I think you hit the nail on the head there. Racing as a team is completely different. In the Ironmans, that's what I did set out to do, try and be professional 70.3 and then progress to the Ironmans in my late 20s. But one thing that resonates with me is when we see lads in the airport traveling on their own, and like, I don't think I could do it. I just full years back to back on my own. Like when we're away, we're living together, we're eating together, and like if we didn't get on, we wouldn't. I don't think we'd be at it as long as we are. But one thing as well, like if I was doing Ironman, I'll never race from a country. You're only racing for yourself and sponsors. So and you'll never see the tricolour been raised. Like you don't get your national flag put up if you win. So I've been fortunate enough to wear the national suit racing with Donnacha, which I wouldn't have been able to do on my own. And we've seen the tricolour been raised when we've been at the top of the podium. And they're two things I 10-year-old me wouldn't believe would ever happen. As I say, the best thing of all is we've grown to be like best friends, and to get to race with your best friend, not many people can say that like in the sport. So yeah, look, I can see me maybe dabbling back into it, but yeah, we've unfinished business. Just missing out in Paris is definitely unfinished business, and it still stings, but we want to put that right.
It was the snorkel, right, that got you that first full length in the swimming. Just to clarify before we wrap this episode up, it was the snorkel helped you out with that, Donnacha, right?
Yeah, it was. Yeah,
Sean, they could put you on a fishing rod and you still wouldn't make
No,
it out
no,
of that water.
no swimming coach ever told me to snorkel. That's the difference. I'm
yeah.
37, I might get swimming from there.
I think the fins on as well.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
whole
Fins,
suit.
paddles,
You can
everything.
put fins on a brick, it's still not going to swim.
Oh, and on that note, thank you very much for listening to this week's episode of the Any Given Run Day podcast with myself, Donnacha, Good Sean, and Eric. Take care.